I never thought I'd be one of those guys posting their divorce drama online. But here I am, 3 years after what I thought was a clean break, dealing with my ex-wife's financial demands yet again. For context, Melissa and I were married for 8 years. No kids, thankfully, just a house in the suburbs and careers that were going in different directions. She was climbing the corporate ladder at a marketing firm while I had invested everything into my small construction business. The split wasn't particularly nasty. We had just grown apart, wanted different things, the usual story. When we divorced, we agreed to a settlement that seemed fair at the time. I kept the business, which was struggling but had potential, and she got our house along with a lump sum payment that represented half of our liquid assets. The agreement explicitly stated that this was a full and final settlement of all financial claims. Her lawyer made sure of that. My lawyer made sure I understood it too. Fast forward to last month. I'm finally seeing real success with my business. After years of grinding, taking every job I could get, and reinvesting almost every penny back into the company, things are taking off. I've got contracts lined up for the next 18 months and have hired a team of 15 guys. Nothing massive, but I'm doing well enough that I bought a new truck and posted about it on social media. That's when the text started. Nice truck. Guess business is booming now. I didn't think much of it at first. Just replied with a casual, yeah, finally turning the corner. 2 days later. Remember how you said your business wasn't worth much during the divorce? Funny how things change. I ignored that one. Then yesterday, I got a formal email from her. She was requesting an additional payment of $50,000 as a fair adjustment to our divorce settlement, given that the business I had undervalued was now clearly thriving. She finished by saying she hoped we could resolve this amicably, without involving attorneys. I was floored. The business was valued fairly at the time based on its financials. Yes, it's worth more now, but that's because of 3 years of backbreaking work, stress that kept me up at night, and risks that I took alone after our marriage ended. The valuation during our divorce was accurate. The business wasn't worth much then because it wasn't doing well. I called my lawyer immediately, who confirmed what I already knew. The settlement was final. She had no legal claim to any growth in my business after the divorce. But then he added, that doesn't mean she can't make life difficult by filing motions and dragging you back to court. That's exactly what happened next. This morning, I was served with papers. Melissa is claiming I committed fraud during our divorce proceedings by intentionally devaluing business assets and concealing potential contracts. The allegations in the court filing were not just false, they were infuriating. There were no concealed contracts during our divorce. The business was barely staying afloat then. I was taking small residential jobs just to keep the lights on while bigger companies were snapping up the lucrative commercial contracts. The major projects I'm working on now weren't even on the horizon back then. I met with my lawyer, Daniel, the next day to go over the case. He was confident but cautious. These claims are baseless, he said, but judges can be unpredictable in family court. They sometimes look at the spirit rather than the letter of agreements. But the agreement was crystal clear. I protested. She got the house free and clear. I'm still renting a one-bedroom apartment because I put everything back into the business. That was her choice. Daniel nodded. We have the documentation to prove the business valuation was legitimate. But litigation is expensive, time-consuming, and stressful. Sometimes people file these motions hoping you'll settle just to make it go away. That's when it clicked. Melissa didn't actually expect to win in court. She expected me to cave and pay her off to avoid the hassle. She knew me well enough to know how much I hated conflict and legal battles. I decided to reach out to her directly, against Daniel's advice. Maybe there was some misunderstanding we could clear up. I suggested meeting for coffee at a neutral location. When we met, I barely recognized her. It wasn't her appearance. She looked great as always, but something had changed in her demeanor. The warm, compromising woman I had married was gone, replaced by someone calculating and cold. Let's cut to the chase, she said before I could even start. Your business is booming now, and I helped you build it. I deserved more than what I got. You got exactly what we agreed to, I replied, keeping my voice steady. The house, half our savings, and your freedom to pursue your career. That was the deal. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. The deal was based on what you told me about the business prospects. Clearly, you knew more than you let on. I didn't. Everything was disclosed properly. The business was struggling then. And now you're flourishing while I'm still in the same position. That's not fair. I took a deep breath. Life isn't always fair, Melissa. I worked 80-hour weeks for 3 years straight after our divorce. I took risks. I slept on a futon in my office some nights to save rent money so I could bid on bigger projects. None of that had anything to do with you. Her expression hardened. I supported you for years while you found yourself in construction. I put my career on hold when we moved for your first big opportunity. And you've been climbing the corporate ladder for the last 5 years. That was your choice, just like sticking with my business was mine. She leaned forward. Here's the deal. $50,000, and this all goes away. Otherwise, I'll make sure everyone knows how you screwed me over. I stood up. There's nothing to know because I didn't screw you over. See you in court. Walking away was harder than I expected. Despite everything, seeing her stirred up old feelings, not of love, but of guilt and obligation that had characterized the final years of our marriage. Had I somehow taken advantage of her? Was I being selfish now? The next 2 months were a blur of legal documents, sleepless nights, and trying to run my business while dealing with the lawsuit. My employees could tell something was wrong, but I kept the details to myself. This was my burden to bear. I started noticing strange things happening. Potential clients who had been eager to work with me suddenly went cold. A local business association that was about to accept my membership application put it on hold. Then one of my crew leaders, Jim, pulled me aside after work. Boss, I thought you should know. There are rumors going around about you. Apparently, Melissa had been reaching out to people in our industry, telling them I was untrustworthy in business deals. She had even contacted my biggest client with vague accusations about financial improprieties. She was systematically trying to destroy what I had built. That night, I called Daniel and told him what was happening. This is harassment and defamation, he said. We can add this to our response and possibly file a countersuit. The court date arrived faster than I expected. I couldn't afford to lose any more business, so I was ready to fight with everything I had. I'd gathered all my financial records from before, during, and after the divorce. I had testimonials from clients and suppliers about when certain opportunities had materialized. I even had my accountant ready to testify about the business valuation during the divorce. When we arrived at the courthouse, I was surprised to see Melissa alone. Her lawyer was nowhere to be seen. My attorney had a conflict, she explained to the judge, who looked skeptical. As the hearing began, the judge reviewed both filings carefully. He asked pointed questions about the original settlement, the current allegations, and the business valuation methods. Melissa tried to argue that I had deliberately misled her about future prospects, but her arguments fell apart under scrutiny. Ms. Carter, the judge finally said, I see no evidence of fraud or concealment in these documents. The business valuation followed standard practices. The growth Mr. Carter's company experienced came years after your divorce was finalized. Furthermore, your settlement agreement explicitly states that it represents a full and final resolution of all financial matters. Then he turned to me. Mr. Carter, your ex-wife's motion is denied. However, I understand you've raised concerns about harassment and defamation. I glanced at Melissa. She looked defeated and, for the first time in years, vulnerable. In that moment, I remembered why I had fallen in love with her all those years ago. Her determination, her pride, her refusal to give up. Those same qualities were now being channeled into this misguided crusade. Your Honor, I'm withdrawing those claims, provided that all communication between Ms. Carter and myself goes through our attorneys from now on. The judge nodded. So ordered. Outside the courthouse, Melissa approached me. Why did you do that? You could have countersued me for everything I've done. Because it needs to end somewhere, I replied. We both need to move on with our lives. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded slightly. I'm sorry about contacting your clients. That was too far. It wasn't a full apology, but it was something. Take care of yourself, Melissa. As I walked to my truck, I felt lighter than I had in months. The legal battle had cost me nearly $15,000, countless hours of stress, and some business opportunities. But I had stood my ground and protected what I had built. That night, I called a meeting with my crew and told them everything. The rumors stop here, I said. We're moving forward. 3 months later, my business is back on track. I've gained back the clients I lost, and then some. Melissa and I haven't spoken, which is probably for the best. I still sometimes wonder if I could have handled things differently, been more generous perhaps. But then I remember the look in her eyes at that coffee shop, calculating what she could extract from me, not what was fair. Sometimes the hardest part of divorce isn't the separation itself, but truly accepting that the person you once loved is now someone with different interests than yours. Someone who might even work against you. It's a painful lesson, but one I needed to learn.